25%, that tells me it's at capacity. And so, the other thing that we heard this afternoon, or this evening, what time is it? Yeah, this evening, almost yesterday, was the traffic concerns. That's been going on for a long time. And now when you're talking about getting even, another 150, 200 kids in there, it's just an accident away, from a disaster here. So none of us want that. So I think that everybody agrees that at some point, rebalancing needs to occur. So to me, the question is, why not now? I think there are options there that would solve this problem. We also just saw the presentation of these older neighborhoods like First Colony where they're losing students pretty rapidly. So, First Colony at 62%, whereas this one's at capacity, it doesn't make sense to me. So what I would recommend is that you guys sit down, Beth, you, and just draw some boundaries. I would draw boundaries assuming that we end up with an elementary school 53, since we kind of just took action, at least, heading that direction. Or if that doesn't work out, then draw a plan B set, where we have to do the additions at Settlers Way and Austin Parkway. And, of course, Commonwealth. But and I think at that point, you should meet with a small focus group of people who are affected. I don't think we need to bring Scott down here and start having, auditoriums full of people at Elkins High School. I don't think that will be productive. And then, the reason for that is because, we sit up here and we're not necessarily living there. And so there's sometimes we may make decisions where there's unintended consequences, so we want to try to avoid that, and that's where we can get some of that small community feedback. And so I think that, we should be making a recommendation to do this for next year, and we need to make that soon so that the planning can take place as far as coursework and whatnot. So that's my spiel, like to hear what y'all think.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mrs. Tossan.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. So I'm going to concur with Mr. Rosenthal. And my reasons are really threefold, I guess. First of all, my kids attend to Baines. At 1,600, we were at capacity. We were over capacity. And the traffic concerns are real. If you ever went to Baines Middle School to pick up kids, it was horrible. It was horrible. And it really was a strain on a lot of the programs there, as well as teachers. And you had to walk up one stairwell and down the other one, and if you got caught walking up the down one or down the up one, then you got detention, and tell my daughter with Down syndrome not to walk up the down one or down the up one because she did it all the time. And then I think it became a game. So it just was, there were no lockers, there were no backpacks. So, so I guess that's one of my reasons, is because I lived it and I know what 1,600 feels like in that building. And secondly, this is just pretty basic for me. We said we were going to do it. We said we were going to do it. So I think we need to do it because we said we were going to do it. And everybody knew it. It's been discussed. It's been discussed since 2014. It was discussed again this last time. I understand that we wanted to wait and see if we were going to get property to build the new elementary school, but at this point, I just think we need to, even if it's a temporary rebalancing, that we just need to do it, and then when we decide what's going to happen with the elementary schools, then we can go back to the drawing board and rezone again, because that's so much fun to rezone. But the point is that we can't have that kind of stress on student learning when we have a school basically next door, right down the street, that we can be utilizing. So that's my 2 cents on that. I have a couple of other questions. I don't know if you want to let the rest of the board weigh in on that, or I can just ask. I guess I'll just go ahead and ask.
Mrs. Tossan,
I'll just go ahead and ask all my questions. So Sullivan Elementary School is at capacity, over capacity with T buildings. Are we looking at capping and overflowing that school like we did at Commonwealth until we can get another elementary school in that area? I mean, how are we going to deal with that? Because I'm looking at 116%. We don't have temporary buildings there now, but we don't have a big site there, do we? It's kind of small. There's not a lot of room.
There is room to bring in some portables.
Okay, so is that our plan? What's our plan? She's dead. Can we get her a mic?
Sorry. The plan was not to bring in portables. After speaking with the principal, and Joe may be able to address this a little bit further, his team has worked with Donna Wisnett on the...
Yeah, it's dead.
And that our meeting is too long.
Yeah.
No, this one's up. Good. All right. So there's not currently a plan to bring a portable to Sullivan for this school year. Are there? But I know that Oscar's group has...
1920. We're talking about 1920?
1920, yes.
Okay. So how are we going to deal with 116%? Do we have a plan? We have a plan, Joe?
So we've been in communication with the campus principal, and although it does show 116%, I mean, the campus principal is confident that she has enough space to go ahead and educate her students at least one more year.
And then we're going to look at next year, what we're going to do in 2020, 2021.
What was that?
And then we're going to revisit it for 2021.
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, we've had the conversations with her, and she just feels extremely confident that, you know, that she can maintain teaching her current population one more year.
Okay. Santa Crossing and Heritage Rose. So Heritage Rose is maybe not a problem next year, but it's going to be a problem probably the year after. Santa Crossing is currently at 111%. We do have temporary buildings there. Are we I assume we're thinking we can manage it next year, and then what?
Yes, manage it next year. We'll continue to monitor, though, and talk with the principal at that school. And then there are already
That's
four
Ida Ford,
portable.
right? Ms.
Ida
Ford,
Ford,
yeah.
yes. There are already
Have
four.
we talked to her?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I spoke with her directly, and she said that they are situated nicely and able to continue and educate the kids next year, but that we need to be looking at it because as we move into 1920 and that continues to increase in that area, then we need to make a
Yeah,
determination.
I'm concerned about that because we have some red over there.
Yes.
So it's coming up pretty quickly. Okay, so that last thing I want to address, of course, is Ridge Point. So thank you for filling us in on the committee that's been convened, and I'd like to be kept up to date on that, on when meetings are happening and what's being discussed, please. Because ultimately, I assume this is going to have to be brought to the board. Is that right?
There may be some aspects, but not a lot of it will. We'll definitely we're keeping the board informed, though.
Okay, well, I would definitely like to be kept informed. It sounds like the committee is considering several things, like it's a 4-year plan, you said, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, so we're looking at everything from flexible scheduling. Are we looking at cap and overflow there? Are they considering cap and, I mean, that's something that we have to consider, isn't that right?
Devin's working directly with the design team, so if you'll speak to that.
Okay.
The microphone's not on.
Cap and overflow isn't part of that design team or the design team's work, but having different plans to plan up to that point is part of their work.
And then if we need additional relief, such as cap and overflow or something along those lines, does that come to the board?
It has not historically, no.
Okay, so you can cap and overflow without talking,
Yeah.
okay. Is that something that you're going to consider if whatever the design team brings back does not give enough relief?
Absolutely is.
Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. Helliger?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I would concur with Mr. Rosenthal because when we met, we got two statements. One about the forced settlement and forced colony, and the other recommendations that we had made earlier. I think it's the right thing for us to do to go ahead and balance those schools, because even though the numbers say one thing, it's functionally not functioning correct, right? So, you know, there's capacity and then there's function. So, you know, I would definitely support us recommending the admin for you all to go ahead and put those boundary lines and put those together. But as I was sitting here listening to the conversation, I started getting all upset. And the reason why I was getting upset, because not for settlement and first colony, was because I want to ensure that we're doing what we're telling the community that we're going to do. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. And so not too long ago, we talked about the High Tower, Willow Ridge, and Bridgepoint High School. Somehow, if I'm correct, somebody please let me know if I'm correct, but the recommendation at that time was to balance enrollment with High Tower High School and Bridgepoint High School. And I asked Ms. Grail about it as well, and she said that was our recommendation. But when we got the information, we got High Tower, Ridgepoint, Willow Ridge, you know, and some Marshall at one point. Then we came back, took that out. And so I just think we're not consistent with how we approach these issues and these concerns. And so when we have, and that's why we have such trust issues with the community, because even though this is the right thing for us to do for First Colony and for settlement, we didn't do the right thing per se around Ridgepoint and High Tower High School, because we brought all this other stuff in to the problem. That wasn't what we had asked people to do. And so I feel like we are, you know, when people say, you know, I have to defend us, and I'm sure you all have to defend us too, to the community when we say, oh, you know, you all are doing it for those people over there, but you're not doing it for us over here. And that's why I was sitting here listening to it, because it's the right thing to do, Dave. But we're not consistent. And the reason why we had to turn back around the rezoning was because we had all kinds of programming issues that weren't there, and it was just such a, I'm gonna say it, it was so convoluted that I couldn't see clearly what the right thing for us to do there. I'm challenging you, Dr. Dupree, and the admin for us to move swiftly around the actions that we say we're going to do on this board. It leaves our kids, because functionally the kids are suffering over here. It's the same kids that's suffering over at Ridgepoint High School. The exact same kids. So I would like to know very soon where we are with the process of getting the information that we need for the Ridgepoint and the High Tower High School area. I would like to see a regular status on that, a weekly status on that, so I know that there's progress being made. I asked for, part of that issue was around early college high schools, was some of the programming that was asked there. I asked the question, no, I made a statement rather, that we would go out and do a communication to the community, that feeder pattern, especially the Marshall High School feeder pattern. I'm not sure where we are with that communication. If that communication went sent out, because I didn't get a communication to say it was sent out. Did I miss it? Board members, did I miss it? So I know we have kids that are enrolling into these programs. We're not doing what we say we're going to do. And I might be non-PC right now, but I kind of had it. Today was not a good day for me. I have been on this board, and I have listened, and I've watched, and we come to consensus. But enough is enough, and it's time for some accountability on this board. I'm tired of not getting the answers. I had heard Ms. James ask a question that I asked 4 years ago when I joined this board. And we're still not getting those answers. So I don't know what to do. I need the support of my fellow board members to help keep us accountable for what the things that we say we're going to do. When we get in here, it's almost midnight. We work things out, and we don't make it happen. I applaud us for the things that we do well, but we've got a lot of work that still needs to get done. And it's time out for some of this.
Mrs. James.
Ms. Helliger, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your passion behind these issues, and I appreciate the reminder that we all need to work together and hold one another accountable for the decisions we make, that we've made in the past, and remind one another what they are if that's necessary. So thank you for sharing that tonight, and I agree with you. With regard to the Fort settlement and First Colony Middle School balance, I agree with what my colleagues have said already. We said we were going to do this in 2014 when we opened Thornton Middle School. We didn't. We said we were going to do it this fall when we voted on the Facilities Master Plan recommendation over the summer. And it's impacting students, and it's impacting their opportunities and their stress level and the stress of the staff and everybody all involved. So I agree with Mr. Rosenthal. One thing I think I heard you say, Ms. Helliger, and I agree with this also, is that this needs to be done quickly because people need to know where they're going to school. So we might not be able to do our regular process. There might have to be a administrative recommendation or something to get this done in the short term. As far as course selection goes, my understanding, and someone can clarify this, but I think this is right, Ms. Saavedra, is that the course selection for the campuses, all the middle school campuses, is the same. The opportunities are the same at both of these campuses. So that's not an issue for people who may have already done that, who may be wondering about that. Those are my thoughts on that particular topic. I do have a question on Ridgepoint High School, though. We've got 12 portable buildings for 600 students. That's concerning to me. How does that work in the core of the building? How does you talked about extra lunch periods, but in terms of just the rest of the facilities, how does that work?
The principal, working with the campus leadership, believes that, ma'am, in this case, those portables are going to be able to make 1920 work without any additional floating teachers. The one thing that the design team is actually working through is the aspect of the cafeteria. So right now, the cafeteria is working, and with the added growth for next year, the design team, and students are part of that team, they are planning for, can a third lunch work, or does a fourth lunch need to be planned? Either way, alternative plans will be built as the design team comes together and produces ideas. Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, I think you did. I just would like to say that it seems to me 600 students is, that's a lot. That's really a lot to be outside. These lunch periods, they're the kids' time to socialize, but when they're so crowded that they can't even get their lunch, or there's no place to sit and they're all sitting on the floor, it just creates all sorts of angst for everybody involved, for the adults and for the students that are there. So I appreciate the principal saying that they're willing to try to make it work. And I just wanted to share my concern that I don't think it's an ideal situation. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, so the other thing I meant to add, and Ms. James reminded me, so in the interest of coming up with some quick solutions for the rebalancing, I would suggest, once you guys have some ideas, maybe work with board members like one-on-one or two-on-one, so that we're not, violating laws. And then, we can give you feedback, and then maybe that's what you take out to a focus group. So, just an idea.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. I do agree with what it is that you said. We said that we're going to do it, so I feel like it's time for us to do it. And I feel like, Dr. Dupree, that you have the information that you need to go forward at this point.
I do.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, we will now have our activity report. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. So this month, board members attended a meeting with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and apparently they became new best friends. I'm just reading what it says. Let's see. Attended inauguration ceremony for Missouri City Mayor Yolanda Ford, meeting with Marshall High School PTO, Vision and Planning Committee meeting, Policy Committee meeting, FBCC Chairman's Gala, Houston Touchdown Club Sportsmanship Award Luncheon, Board Leadership Academy Advocacy Session, Congressman Pete Olson visit to Austin High School, Lakeview Elementary Design Team Kickoff, Student Leadership Trip to Austin, GCAASB meeting, Girls Basketball Playoff Games, Mayor Alan Owen Appreciation, TASA, TEA School Facilities Committee meeting, NSBA Washington, D.C. Advocacy Institute, and Brass to Brass construction meeting. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Next are our board special reports. Mrs. James.
Yes, very briefly, I wanted to tell the board that I went to the Gulf Coast Area Association of School Boards general meeting. Docs Gonzalez from TASB Governmental Relations gave a very nice report on a number of bills, a couple of which Mr. Bassett mentioned tonight. At your place, you'll have a list of all of them and a little bit of a summary statement of what they are. And you can follow these at your leisure on the TextLedge app.
Thank you, Mrs. James. I just wanted to also communicate to the rest of the board that, as you know, I attended the NSBA, National School Board Association Conference in Washington, D.C. on the 27th of January to the 29th. And we went to Capitol Hill on Tuesday, and I visited with Al Green, Pete Olson, Ted Cruz, John Cornyn, and we basically discussed funding, IDEA, school safety, some of the regulations that we have to work under as a public school district. I feel like it was effective, and I had the opportunity to be one-on-one with some staff and some of our representatives, and so anyway, I appreciate y'all's support. Moving on to our consent agenda, do I have a motion? We will be removing item 11B to A.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of 11B to A.
I have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes. We do not have any action items this evening, so we will be reviewing future board meeting agenda items, Dr. Dupree.
Yes, we meet this coming Wednesday to conduct the superintendent's quarterly formative evaluation discussion. And on March 4th, we'll return for the workshop for March. And as a reminder, the regular board meeting in March is not until the 25th due to the spring break holiday. But we'll be doing updates on college and career readiness and safety and security plans, as well as a number of policies.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.